Incidents in the Life of a Slave Girl, Chapter XXIX, that would be 29. Preparations for Escape. I hardly expect that the reader will credit me when I affirm that I lived in that little dismal hole, almost deprived of light and air, and with no space to move my limbs for nearly 7 years. But it is a fact, and to me a sad one, even now, for my body still suffers from the effects of that long imprisonment, to say nothing of my soul. Members of my family, now living in New York and Boston, can testify to the truth of what I say. Countless were the nights that I sat late at the little loophole, scarcely large enough to give me a glimpse of one twinkling star. There, I heard the patrols and slave hunters conferring together about the capture of runaways, well knowing how rejoiced they would be to catch me. Season after season, year after year, I peeped at my children's faces and heard their sweet voices, and with the heart yearning all the while to say, "Your mother is here." Sometimes it appeared to me as if ages had rolled away since I entered upon that gloomy, monotonous existence. At times, I was stupefied and listless. At other times, I became very impatient to know when these dark years would end, and I should again be allowed to feel the sunshine and breathe the pure air. After Ellen left us, this feeling increased. Mr. Sands had agreed that Benny might go to the north whenever his Uncle Philip could go with him, and I was anxious to be there also to watch over my children and protect them so far as I was able. Moreover, I was likely to be drowned out of my den if I remained much longer, for the slight roof was getting badly out of repair, and Uncle Philip was afraid to remove the shingles, lest someone should get a glimpse of me. When storms occurred in the night, they spread mats and bits of carpet, which in the morning appeared to have been laid out to dry, but to cover the roof in the daytime might have attracted attention. Consequently, my clothes and bedding were often drenched, a process by which the pains and aches in my cramped and stiffened limbs were greatly increased. I resolved various plans of escape in my mind, which I sometimes imparted to my grandmother when she came to whisper with me at the trap door. The kind-hearted old woman had an intense sympathy for runaways. She had known too much of the cruelties inflicted on those who were captured. Her memory always flew back at once to the sufferings of her bright and handsome son, Benjamin, the youngest and dearest of her flock. So, whenever I alluded to the subject, she would groan out, "Oh, don't think of it, child, you'll break my heart." I had no good old Aunt Nancy now to encourage me, but my brother William and my children were continually beckoning me to the north. And now I must go back a few months in my story. I have stated that the 1st of January was the time for selling slaves, or leasing them out to new masters. If time were counted by heartthrobs, the poor slaves might reckon years of suffering during that festival so joyous to the free. On the New Year's Day, preceding my aunt's death, one of my friends named Fanny was to be sold at auction to pay her master's debts. My thoughts were with this during all the day and night. I anxiously inquired what had been her fate. I was told that she had been sold to one master and her 4 little girls to another master, far distant, that she had escaped from her purchaser and was not to be found. Her mother was the old Aggie I've spoken of. She lived in a small tenement belonging to my grandmother, and built on the same lot with her own house. Her dwelling was searched and watched, and that brought the patrols so near me that I was obliged to keep very close to my den. The hunters were somehow eluded, and not long afterwards Benny accidentally caught sight of Fanny in her mother's hut. He told his grandmother, who charged him never to speak of it, explaining to him the frightful consequences, and he never betrayed the trust. Aggie little dreamed that my grandmother knew where her daughter was concealed, and that the stooping form of her old neighbor was bending under a similar burden of anxiety and fear. but these dangerous secrets deepened the sympathy between the two old persecuted mothers. My friend Fanny and I remained many weeks hidden within call of each other. Wow. But she was unconscious of the fact. I longed to have her share my den, which seemed a more secure retreat than her own. But I had brought so much trouble on my grandmother that it seemed wrong to ask her to incur greater risks. My restlessness increased. I had lived too long in bodily pain and anguish of spirit. Always I was in dread that by some accident or some contrivance, slavery would succeed in snatching my children from me. This thought drove me nearly frantic, and I determined to steer for the North Star at all hazards. At this crisis, Providence opened an unexpected way for me to escape. My friend Peter came one evening and asked to speak with me. "Your day has come, Linda," he said. "I have found a chance for you to go to the Free States. You have a fortnight to decide." The news seemed too good to be true, but Peter explained his arrangements and told me all that was necessary was for me to say I would go. I was going to answer him with the joyfulness when the thought of Benny came to my mind. I told him that the temptation was exceedingly strong, but I was terribly afraid of Dr. Flint's alleged power over my children. Dr. Flint is her former owner. That's who she's escaped from. I was terribly afraid of Dr. Flint's alleged power over my children and that I could not go and leave him behind. Peter remonstrated earnestly. He said such a good chance might never occur again, that Benny was free and could be sent to me, and that for the sake of my children's welfare, I ought not to hesitate a moment. I told him I would consult with Uncle Philip. My uncle rejoiced in the plan and bade me go by all means. He promised, if his life was spared, that he would either bring or send my son to me as soon as I reached a place of safety. I resolved to go, but thought nothing had better be said to my grandmother till very near the time of departure. But my uncle thought she would feel it more keenly if I left here so suddenly. I will reason with her, he said, and convince her how necessary it is, not only for your sake, but for hers also. You cannot be blind to the fact that she is sinking under her burdens. I was not blind to it. I knew that my concealment was an ever-present source of anxiety, and that the older she grew, the more nervously fearful she was of discovery. My uncle talked with her and finally succeeded in persuading her that it was absolutely necessary for me to seize the chance so unexpectedly offered. Okay, so I'll stop there. I'm reading this. It's part of the public domain. You can find this online, and it occurred to me that it'd be better to share reading it with someone as opposed to what I normally do, which is highlight it online. I have an Apple, and so then I just have it read it to me. I have a reading disorder, so I connect better with words when I can also hear them. So reading out loud is also easier for me. Like, this is faster for me than trying to read it quietly and silently. But also hearing it, like is what I do on the net, also resonates a lot with me. So I thought that other people might enjoy hearing some of the books that I read. So as not to disobey trademarks, I'll be reading more books to you from the public domain. Anything that you can find on Google. So enjoy. Classic slave narrative.
Moi je vais savoir. À cause de toi, tout ce que j'ai fait marche à